children. It's Pastor Matthew here for our Children's Praise. We're going through our catechism today, and as you know, we've been going through these questions. They deal a lot with our falling in the garden. We're talking about sin in general and how sin has ruined everything in this whole world. And each time we look at these questions, we're looking at another little piece of what that means to know that sin is a big deal. It's a big problem. So the question we're going to look at today is question number 19 in the Catechism. And the question asks this: what is the misery of man's fallen condition? So we know that word misery means really, really sad or really, really bad. So now you know what the word misery means. Misery is when you're really sad or it's a really bad situation that makes you miserable. What is the misery of man's fallen condition? Now here's a very long answer. By their fall, all mankind lost fellowship with God and brought his anger and curse on themselves. They are therefore subject to all the miseries of this life, to death itself, and to the pains of hell forever. Now, some of these answers we've looked at are very short. This and the ones we're going to look at in the future start to become very long, and there's lots of words in there. So instead of looking at all of it, we just want to point out one really important thing for today. When we talk about how we fell into misery, into sorrow or sadness or bad things, we're going to look just at that first part where it says, by their fall, all mankind lost fellowship with God. Now, fellowship is a word that also means friendship. So you probably know what friendship is. Friendship is when you have someone that's close to you, someone you can talk to and laugh with and share life with. That's what we call a friend, someone that you can trust, someone that you like to play with or do projects with. That's a friend. So as you're sitting there in your class or watching this video, there's a good chance that you're around friends right now, around people you know, and you get to talk to each other and have communication is a really big word for just being able to talk and share what's on your mind with other people. That's what we lost with God. So we don't have fellowship with God. Or we could say we don't have friendship with God. Now, I'm just going to read the answer one more time so they understand what that means. To not have fellowship with God, here's what it says follows. Because we brought his anger and his curse on us, and therefore we were subject to the miseries of life and death itself and the pains of hell. So not having friendship with God means that God is angry with us and that we're cursed, that he's taken away his blessings from us. And that leads to a very miserable life and death, and even what the Bible calls hell. That is, the death that goes on forever. So these are very big things. Even at your age, to start to understand this, this is what the gospel means, that God saves us from hell, from death, everlasting death, which is being separated from God. So when we talk about life, life isn't just, I want everyone to do this and go like this. Take a big deep breath. And when you breathe in, that means that you're alive. But see, in the Bible, life is more than just breath. Life is friendship with God. So we don't actually have life in the biggest way possible. We only have breath. But without Jesus, we don't actually have friendship with God. So let me try to explain this to you by looking at this very loud piece of flowers here. So these are toy flowers. These aren't real, right? But do you see what they're connected to? This big green wreath, this big circle. Now that kind of represents God, because we know how plants or flowers work is that plants have to be planted. They have to fit inside the ground, right? So that they can actually grow and have life. And life's very beautiful. See these little plastic flowers, but they are pretty because they represent the real flowers that have different colors and they're all connected with different petals, and they all have different shapes and different styles and different appearances, and it's really, really pretty. But if you look underneath, you see why the flowers work is because they have a connection to this ground or the life or the soil. So that's really what it means when we say we lost friendship with God. Friendship is like these flowers being in the ground. These flowers are friends to the ground, right? So when we fell, here's what the garden's an image of. Because we keep beautiful flowers like this in the garden, right? Well, Adam and Eve were in the garden. So when they sinned, they fell into a place of sin and misery. And that misery, we're told, is losing friendship with God because he's angry with us and he curses us to die. So to curse a flower or to be losing friendship with a flower is it's pulled out of the garden and it's left like this on the side. And for a moment, it still looks pretty, but do you know what happens to flowers that get pulled out of the garden? If we pulled all these flowers out of the garden like this, and we just left them here to die, that means that even though they look pretty for a little bit, they're eventually going to shrivel up and die. And that's what the image is for you and me. That see, when we're broken from our fellowship with God, that when we are separated from him, that friendship is gone, then we die. But in the gospel, we're told that we can be planted back to be friends with God. Here's the Bible verse about this in Ephesians 2. Ephesians 1:12 says this, remember that you were at that time separated from Jesus and alienated from the commonwealth of Israel and were strangers to the covenant of the promise, having no hope and without God in the world. So what that Bible verse is saying, before Jesus saves us, that's what we were like. We were separated from God, and God was not in our world. We didn't know who he was. So we were cut off and going to die. But when you turn and trust in Jesus, what happens is God takes you as a pretty flower because he made you beautiful and he made you to live so that you can have life with God just by being planted back in to Jesus Christ. He is the one that we get planted into. And how do we do that? Believing in him. That's what faith. Faith is this. You take yourself and you put yourself in Jesus and you live. So that's what it means to have broken fellowship with God or friendship with God and to regain it by having a trust in Jesus so you can flourish like a flower.